Right now, I'd like to introduce Lisa Routel. I met Lisa 2 years ago when she was a speaker at a conference at I think I had 1,500 people there. And Lisa was with Verizon at that point in time. And Lisa actually lives in New Jersey, and she's a graduate of NYU Stern here, and she's also the chair of the alumni group in New Jersey. So Lisa's here, and Lisa is also the past chief strategy officer for the biotech company called BioOx, and she's also been part of the loyalty strategy team at Verizon, as well as working with Jaguar and HBO and Burberry.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction. It was by happenstance that we met 2 years ago, and I'm really happy to be a part of the MASB team, and then also very big thank you to Rutgers for hosting today. So thank you all around. And as Lee was mentioning, my experience, it is varied, various functional experience, various industry experience. And I wanted to almost combine all of that and showcase how linking strategy, marketing, operations together really deliver exceptional brand experiences, because we won't have sustainable growth without that cohesion, without that alignment, and really having that operational capability to deliver those brand experiences. So really, the goal needs to be to not have these separate functions operate in separate silos, but rather have that cohesiveness and that alignment. So here's the agenda. I created my own agenda here. First is a brief intro, and then really the vision. And the vision relates back to the strategy, and really, again, delivering on that brand promise to the brand experience, because without the proper vision and alignment, you'll have that disconnect between the promise and the experience. And this is where strategy establishes the vision, and then marketing shapes those customer expectations, and then operations ultimately delivers on those promises. And then next in the agenda is how to build, and that's where I want to go into as much detail as possible how to build those brand experiences in a very intentional way and making it very memorable, because every interaction by the customer really has to have integration and delivering on the promise that relates back to the customer journey. Ultimately, it all has to come together. For Bring It to Life, this is where I'll speak to my own personal experiences, because as Lee was mentioning, I've had brand experiences with Verizon. I launched their Verizon loyalty platform, as well as Jaguar Land Rover. That was a really pivotal time in the company where we launched new categories and new products. And that's where we launched our first SUV, our first crossover, our first electric vehicle. So there was a lot of activations there. Really, those brand activations bring your whole product to life. And then finally, just a brief conclusion. So this is a little bit about me. So I have a little bit of everything. I've worked in strategy, marketing, operations at some big brands, Verizon, as I just mentioned, Jaguar Land Rover, HBO, and Burberry. And then ultimately, I came back because I was first a research scientist in the pharmaceutical industry. And now, most recently, I was at BioOx, a biotechnology company, and really using my experience in an industry where I started my career. So it's really been like a 360 moment, I would say. So from brand promise to brand experience. And this is where in today's competitive marketplace, a brand is defined not by what it promises, but by what customers actually experience. So while strategy establishes the vision, marketing shapes consumer expectations, and operations deliver on those promises. So as I mentioned earlier, everything starts with the vision, starts with that strategic vision, and then falls within marketing, because then it shapes those consumer expectations. And then the delivery is within operations. So when these functions operate in isolation, that's where companies risk that disconnect between what they communicate and then what customers receive. And that's where trust within brands can become broken. So high-performing organizations that really prioritize this alignment, as strategy defines those objectives, marketing creates awareness and drives engagement, and operations delivers on the experience. For me personally, and this is where I feel it really gets forgotten about, is concentrating on customer service. I've worked at many companies where customer service, it's being cut. For example, at Verizon, many times because the Verizon platform was within the My Verizon app, a lot of times customer service was essentially canceled, and it was encouraged for customers to speak with chatbots within the app. And there's a disconnect there. You lack that face-to-face contact because customer service, ultimately, it's your face of the brand. It's your interaction with the brand. And that's something where, for me personally, I feel like that's a touch point within the customer journey that's frequently overlooked and dismissed. And then, again, going back to the alignment of the functions, ensuring that messaging, visual identity, and service standards and product experience, they essentially all have to tell the same story. So this is a quote from me. And high-performing organizations intentionally connect strategy, marketing, operations to create seamless, consistent brand experiences. And then another quote that I made up while creating this presentation, because I really wanted to create a roadmap for everyone to follow that they could take back with them with their own brand. Organizations that successfully integrate strategy, marketing, operations, they don't simply build strong brands, they create exceptional brand experiences that customers remember, recommend, and return to. So again, you want that memorable experience, really eliminate those points of friction and create that alignment. So here, I wanted to start off with some theory, create an overall strategy, again, establishing the vision. Then I'll go into more tactical pieces and some of those roadmaps. And I want to really bring it to life with my own personal experiences. So really, a cohesive brand experience transforms the customer journey from a series of disconnected touch points into a cohesive experience, and ultimately builds trust, strengthens loyalty, and differentiates the organization. So I broke out 3 key components to a cohesive brand experience. So first, identify key brand touch points. So this involves really examining and mapping out the touch points of the customer journey. Personally, I like doing that. I think it's important to regularly do this almost annually with every brand. Map out all your touch points of the customer journey, and this is where it's key that you map all the touch points, and that's where you start seeing that a lot of times we're talking about the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. That's where you start to see that if it's siloed, you miss entire customer touch points within the journey. It has to be very holistic and 360. And as a marketer, it is instrumental to identify the impactful touch points between your brand and your audience. And then the second step is identifying the core brand elements. This is where you set that whole foundation for your brand experience. And you do this really by establishing a clear mission, vision, and ultimately your set of values. It really goes back to your brand proposition and your values and what you stand for. So your mission is your present purpose, your what, why, who. Your vision is your future goal. It paints an inspiring picture of the future you want to create. And then ultimately tracing it all back to your values. These are your guiding rules. These are your core beliefs and behaviors that shape your company's daily choices and culture. And this is what I think is really important, especially in this day and age, is connecting online and offline experiences, because a lot of times we focus entirely online and then really have that disconnect, that barrier with offline, with brand activations. But really the key is to have a seamless transition where they're both completely integrated. That could be with systems, that could be with QR codes, that could be with social media, and have that integration. Ultimately, you have to have that alignment with your digital and then physical presence. And also you want to unify the customer data, align visual and verbal identity, and offering blended experiences. So that could be something where you buy online and you pick up in store. We had that a lot at Verizon, really integrating that where it's the most convenient option for the customer. And from my experience personally, I've had a lot of experience with launching CRM systems, both at Jaguar Land Rover as well as at Burberry. And that's where it's key to have all your systems in a shared, centralized location. That's where at Jaguar specifically, I created with a team a global centralized CRM system. And that really gave a holistic 360 view of the customer. We actually called it single view CRM because it had that 360 approach.
So if I might, where do you think the areas which are most in need generally are? Like, are there things in particular that we as marketers are very good at? And are there some things that, we tend to more often than not, not meet them from your experiences?
Well, I think that from my own experience working for a lot of really big brands, like say Verizon, where you have thousands of employees, multiple sites, that's where, for me specifically, creating a holistic 360 customer journey, that can actually be very difficult. I had to really interact with multiple different teams. Sometimes that information wasn't readily available, and reaching out to those stakeholders. And sometimes those teams can be very protective. So I think marketers from different functional teams, especially with Rising Up, it was a centralized hub. And that's where you had to break down the silos and work with the technology team, the accessories team. You had to work with the partnership team. And that's where we have to almost get out of our own box and reach out to the various stakeholders where we may not have a traditional relationship. I formed new relationships in order to get that holistic customer journey. Because without that customer journey, then you just have gaps, I call it, within the tapestry. So starting off again with the strategy, that vision, that strategic view, and you get that by the customer journey, and then mapping that out, and then have it trickle down to the various tactics. So that's why, say if you do get that 360 view of the customer through the customer journey, connecting online and offline experiences won't be as difficult. You have to really do the legwork beforehand in order to understand how to aggregate that data together. And that's even where it really goes back to a lot of systems, especially a lot of companies that have legacy systems. That's where I find that even the CRM systems that I was involved with, they were siloed in itself, where it had partial data. It only had data from certain teams. And that's where, again, from an information standpoint, from a data standpoint, you have to know that you have the full data set is there, and then you could piece it together and target certain customers and segment how you want to. but you have to have the starting point to be holistic and correct.
How do you identify the key touch points? What is the information? I mean, is it just customer empathy? Is it survey data? What lets you know that?
You know, I almost call those pivotal touch points, the moments that matter. And a lot of times you start seeing, for example, at Verizon, over time, sometimes you just need historical data. When the team and I launched the Verizon platform, it was brand new. You don't have that historical data yet. But over time, once you start to acquire that, you start really piecing together findings. We had a whole market research arm to our team. And say we discovered a moment that mattered was, say, within that first 3 months of a customer's joining of Verizon up. It was key that they were strongly active at that point, because if they were not engaged with the platform, then they were essentially long-term disengaged. They're essentially inactive completely with the platform. So sometimes it takes time to note the moments that matter, but to really see if there's some major trends within customer data overall. That was an overall trend for almost all members. But then there might be pieces. We had subsegments within that platform, say veterans, say bundled customers that were both wireless and wireline, those type of things. So there might be also trends within those subsegments, so really following those trends. And that's when we really were aligned with the market research side of things.
I think there will come people in communication across own silos. So we, in my consulting role, we create new branding promises, being very brands all the time. And they never, very rare, that one time stands out like a shining star or a complete, end to end. But the reason we did it was creating a new brand serum, which we had to do after we merged with the regulatory reasons. And we got together, the heads of every single department, the 2 days work session. And each together they worked out groups how each of them could implement the new brand proposition in their part of the organization. We had the others all helping them too, arguing with them, and it led to great changes. So, for example, part of the brand proposition was seeds. Part of the brand proposition was simplicity, fast and simple. It's about fast, simple, and simple. What we discovered in this website was that any key decision had to go from those scenarios where somewhere in the depths of Brazil, not Mato Grosso or wherever, had to go right up to senior management in Des Moines, Iowa. And it took 2 weeks to get any response. So it led to major organization changes, product changes, lead changes, technology changes, HR changes. The only reason was we got together 2 days to work. Usually you never get to.
Yes.
Very rare.
Absolutely. That's where, for me personally, that was a major component, and also those shared objectives and goals, because a lot of times when you work across,
sell them in first.
Yes, you need that buy-in, because if they don't realize that it's a shared goal and a shared opportunity, you're going to have a turf war, you're going to have pushback, you're going to have, a lot of barriers being set up. So exactly that, it has to have that alignment and showcase a shared vision and shared objectives.
Especially something in that which relates to simply incentive compensation. If you get that, that's all good.
Well, that's actually a major point too, driving the revenues of a business unit. Because say at Verizon Up, it started off as entirely app-based with the My Verizon app, and also it was partnership-based, so it could be with Starbucks. We had a lot of actually sports brands as well. We still did with the NFL. We had a whole partnership with them that was major. But what changed was a transactional element started to be added, where we started adding in all these different Verizon teams. So the accessory team started really promoting their technology, say speakers, cases, those type of things. And we started having these transactional revenue goals. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing a lot of buy-in that you weren't seeing initially, because you're also leveraging their resources and they're leveraging your platform, and it's cross-functional win-win. I think there was someone with that here. And then here, this was an outline, almost how-to steps, how to build brand experiences. And they really relate back to those core components on the previous slide. So first, define your brand strategy. This is both a quantitative and a qualitative process, almost what we were just discussing. And really identify your highest value segments and develop your value prop. And make sure your purpose, mission, and vision are crystal clear. And finally, determine what emotions you want tied to your brand. Say for Verizon, we really wanted to be tied to not only network quality and performance, but also that we're a family brand. Most likely, if you're the account holder, your children are also on your line, that we really offer benefits for an entire family. And later on, I'll speak to more of those emotions tied to it. And then second, going back to what I really wanted to emphasize earlier, was you need to understand the customer journey. It's really identifying, again, those moments that matter. And these critical touch points in a customer journey have an outsized emotional impact on the brand perception. So say for Verizon, arrivals, that's a customer's first impression of your store or your website, or even at Jaguar Land Rover, your website is key because that's really the configurators. That's a major touch point for customers, as well as the retail experience. That's what we really tried to leverage, and we did a whole revamp of all our retail stores. Also, most companies call them dealerships, but really create that luxury experience. And then also address those pain points. Like I feel personally customer service is a major pain point, or if there's long lines for a new device launch, those type of things. And then again, transitions like sales to customer support. And identifying and optimizing these key interaction points helps brands build that lasting loyalty and reduce churn. And then third, translate strategy into experiences. Now, this relates back to building a cohesive brand experience and connecting offline and online experiences. And brand activations and building offline in-person experiences, that's where you truly bring your brand to life. And I'll go into some of those tangible examples. And then finally, the fourth step establishes the alignment between all these functions. So here I've outlined the three core vehicles as to how a company can build brand experiences that encourage customers to engage with the brand in a really memorable type of way. So these vehicles create direct engagement that builds awareness, emotional connection, and leads to immediate action by a customer. So the first vehicle is brand activations. And brand activations, they can come in many different forms. And from my own personal experience, I've been involved with VIP experiences, music concerts, sporting events, games, community programs, driving events, tech activations, and then even major art festivals. Then the second vehicle is brand partnerships. And the brand partnerships, they can also serve as brand activations when there's a shared benefit there. And I'll go into more concrete examples of that as well later on. And brand partnerships, they are strategic collaborations that create a mutual value by expanding audience reach, sharing marketing costs, and boosting brand credibility. And really, the core benefits are audience growth, cost savings, and also added trust. For example, for Jaguar Land Rover, when we launched our first electric vehicle, the I-Pace, we had a whole exhibit and booth at South by Southwest, and we aligned with Wired magazine, a tech publication, so we earned a lot of earned media there as well, and we had overlap between audiences and really wanted to appeal to that tech-savvy segment, and it really added validity to our claims. And really ensure that you reach success in your brand partnership. It's key for both partners to have, again, that shared vision in clear terms. And then finally, the third vehicle is online engagement. Online engagement is a key complement to the in-person experience of a brand activation. So using digital tools and platforms allow brands to build real-time, interactive, and personal connections with customers. So there's a lot of different types of interactive content that can complement in-person activation. So specifically for Verizon Up, we had a lot of activity within the app. We had gamification, we had quizzes, we had polls, and that was a way to actually receive a lot of firsthand feedback from customers. This was firsthand, first-party data from market research, so there's a lot to absorb there. So these are the different steps. So previously I went through the strategic framework. Now these are the more tactical pieces, breaking down each of the different vehicles into these separate frameworks. So for brand activation, I have the first step as establishing the brand promise and business objectives. So that really means establishing your brand promise, and you really want to nail down exactly what we were just discussing. How do you want your customers to think, and how do you want them to feel? And define what does success look like specifically at what specific point you are in your product life cycle. So again, our performance tour is a brand new product. We're looking for acquiring new customers. So that determined the experience, and the call to action was to either configure a vehicle or to submit a deposit for a pre-sale.
So again, I'll go back to, you kind of answered my question, but let me move on to the question. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to Jaguar, but in a scenario, what if your product doesn't live up to your brand promise? How do you modify your brand promise? So let's take, for example, in the scenario, Jaguar has some level of technology, but at the end of the day, there are competitors that will absolutely outperform that when it comes to either track or, just everyday, aggressive driving. If that's the case, how do you define your promise? Is it led by what realistically the product is going to deliver, or is it an ambition of what you think the product is going to deliver and you want to sell it? How do you balance that?
So Jaguar, I think it's a almost like a hybrid, because Jaguar, it is, one of their values is performance, but it's also luxury. It's also premium. So you start seeing that, say, there's other luxury vehicles, say Audi or even lower end Mercedes, that they have really strong performance, I have to say. But they don't have, say, the same luxury experience to the point where Jaguar differentiates itself into being even premium. So that's a step up as well. And we try to have our experiences aligned with that, with, say, it's a VIP type of lounge, you have your own video, that's pretty dramatic. Also, say, our retailers were revamped, so those are aligned with that premium experience. So you do have to keep an eye out on your competitive set, but you also have to see what makes yourself very unique and what differentiates you. So it's a combination of performance, and we have some racing vehicles. There's also luxury and premium experience. And there's also a whole varied line of Jaguars, and we even expanded it. So we had our premium vehicles, say the F-Type, that really was competitive with the Porsche 911. And then you had the new E-Type, which was a compact sedan. So you had a wide array, and we appealed to really a wide array of customers. That's why we needed to acquire a whole new set of customers. So it's really aligning your customers with your products, but also you have to align expectations because you can't set false promises. You have to establish trust. You ultimately have to really have a lot of confidence within your own product. And that's what Jaguar specifically, we always had a performance history, but there were several years where we had a lot of integrity issues, but then we revamped that, and then J.D. Powers had us ranked at the top. So you have to, some of those product issues you have to address head on. Yeah. So, so step 2, design the experience and connect every customer touch point. This is where you design the experience and where you need to connect every touch point together, make it cohesive. And then step 3, this is where you really measure success. And at this point, it's really crucial to have functional alignment within your organization. That was what we were discussing before. So strategy is important before the activation even begins, because that's where it ultimately defines the objectives. And then marketing plays a role before, during, and after. And that's really key too, is that really in creating that anticipation during the event, make it very interactive, and then after, because that's where you want to really nurture those leads and those relationships. And then finally, operations delivers the experience. So it is pivotal to prepare for the experience beforehand, ensure things run smoothly. Now, this is the tactical piece for the brand partnerships, and this is a framework that to follow for brand partnerships. So step 1, ultimately best practices, provide customers with memorable experiences, achieve measurable business outcomes, and focus on really your employees delivering flawless execution, because ultimately your employees are your ultimate brand advocates. And step 2, decide on what type of partnership and business benefits you really need. So for example, at Jaguar, we focused on content and co-marketing partnerships. I mentioned the iPace. Also, we also had different partnerships for different vehicles, even retail partnerships like Thomas Pink and at Art Basel. So different products can align with different partners. And then step 3, this also relates to the final step, which connects the partnership across all functions. So for strategy, you identify potential partners with common goals, develop joint messaging for marketing, and really coordinate those executions. And then finally, there's the online engagement framework. And this is really the core component for an impactful brand experience, especially when online engagement supports in-person brand activation, and the online component extends the reach of the activation to all points before, during, and after. So step 1, build communities, not audiences. This is something that really was key for Verizon. We no longer wanted to just have audiences. We wanted to leverage the Verizon platform and really build a community. And there's many different types of communities. So I just mentioned the loyalty community. There's also customer spotlight stories. That was something that we really leveraged with a lot of our super tickets, we call them, with concerts and sporting events, as well as user-generated content. And then step 2, integrate physical and digital experiences. That's where you connect the online, offline interactions with customers. And there's many solutions for making this connection. Mobile apps, that's where Verizon app was strictly within the My Verizon app. Live streaming, we had a lot of joint events, specifically with our connection with Live Nation, and we had live streaming concerts. And then social media hashtags to also build community. One of those concerts I'll make a mention was with Shawn Mendes. I don't know if some of you know Shawn Mendes, but there was a private concert. It was a whole VIP experience. He live streamed it, and there was a lot of user-generated content. And that really appealed to the younger segment in leveraging those connections, those that had, say, their parents as the account holder, and really creating those lifelong connections. So this is Bring It to Life. So these are some examples of my own personal brand activations within Verizon. So Verizon, the loyalty platform, we had a lot of different partnerships. It began as a partnership-based app. So we had partners with Live Nation. That even expanded to pre-sales. That was major because usually pre-sales are reserved for credit cards and those type of things. But we received that type of contract with them, and that enabled us to have a lot of VIP experiences, such as meet and greets and those type of things. We had a really strong partnership with the NFL, and it's continuing to this day. And we have some of those tentpole type of experiences, like the Super Bowl. There's something just at the last Super Bowl called House of Verizon. And that's where it was combined with all sorts of different types of entertainment beyond just football. There were musicians there, artists there, fashion designers there, and we made it truly interactive. And we also want to showcase the 5G capabilities. There's a lot of hashtags and also QR codes that are used, and a lot of interactive real-time type of events. And on top of all those type of major type of initiatives, there was something that we changed our focus a bit during the pandemic because we saw a change in customer tastes and preferences, and we had a partnership with Visa, and it was called Pay It Forward. And this was at the heart of the pandemic, and a lot of small businesses were actually going out of business. And so Verizon partnered with Visa, and what we did was we offered as a reward within Verizon Up a prepaid gift card. So customers could claim that gift card, use it for local businesses, and really pay it forward. And we had really unique events that would align with this whole initiative, where we had live streaming of different musicians and concerts that were aligned with this initiative. And it was posted on Twitter and YouTube, and we really tried to make it as interactive as possible and also share the stories of these small businesses. So it really showcases that Verizon is very integrated within individual communities.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Underlying a lot of these types of experiences are legal agreements because of the co-partnership time. And as a little bit of background, MASB has worked closely with the ANA, and we actually did a sponsorship survey. We did it for several years, skipping years, to see the trends over time. And one of the interesting things about the ANA MASB study that we did was we did a qualitative follow-up session after one of them, where people were saying, how were their experiences with experiential marketing and so on. And overall, these experiential ones were what people were reporting as some of their toughest of all their sponsorship, or that type of genre celebrity sponsorship and experiences. You put that all together. And one case example in particular was a company who had a sporting event. They had negotiated a legal agreement to use that sporting event's IP on their packaging. It was a fast-moving consumer good. And for some reason, on the operations side, there was a week left out, and that they actually missed their window for getting the packages into the store, which was also, you have the retail component where the retail entity was working with them for special displays and so on. And there was a week that got left out in the communications on the operations side, so it actually ended up missing the event by a week. And again, going through that on the legal side, they identified that it was an issue between the negotiation on the legal side and having those completed and the window for the operations side. And so my question, that was very long-winded, I apologize, but to give you that background, how do you avoid that? Like, how did you avoid that? You know, in your experiences, I mean, because you talk about the operations and the marketing come together, but then there's this legal there as around, and so how did you do that?
Well, you know what? I think the key is to set a longer window than you expect, because there's always something that happens. I mean, with these type of partnerships with Live Nation, that was really a $1 billion deal. NFL, NHL, NBA, all these type of things. You can't miss the deadline for the Super Bowl. You can't miss certain concert dates. So that being said, from my own personal experience, that's really project management, adding in extra buffer days, and then also incorporating legal earlier than you think. Because a lot of times the business units, we do have discussions with negotiations. From my own personal experience, I always lean into legal, and I bring them in almost as early as possible in order to address any sort of roadblocks and be proactive instead of reactive. So like even for Live Nation, I mean, that took a lot of time, not only to secure that deal, but also to prepare for the launch. I mean, granted, these are very aggressive timelines, but that being said, you have to, this goes back to breaking down the silos, incorporate the proper stakeholders at the right time, and ensure that you have the right communication flow. So that's where I ultimately trace it back to project management and communication, and really understanding timelines, because timelines can shift. You have to be nimble. All that being said, you should set yourself up for success and not failure. Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything with really going back to the currency, because some of these brand activations, I mean, I want to highlight this really relates back to the feeling of these type of these rewards. Say, for example, we had a lot for National Baseball League, certain tickets, and we would showcase, say, a father and a daughter going to a baseball game and show that in commercials. And sometimes it's good to showcase how these type of in-person activations really drive customer loyalty and go back to our core value. And then finally, for Jaguar brand activations, I did mention the Art of Performance tour. That won actually a lot of different awards, and it really drove, again, a lot of pre-sales, configurations where a customer goes in and configures the vehicle of their choice, and they really got to experience the product. We also had different type of experiential driving events for retention of customers, existing customers. It could be really unique, especially those that are in the high value segment. Ice drives, where customers literally drive on the ice. And it's really unique. So there are different types of experiences, again, for different types of customers, either acquiring new customers or retaining existing customers. And yeah, and also for Land Rover, I should mention this, there was a whole driving school. So we had various driving schools throughout the country, and that was a way to really retain and our existing customers and have them engage and have them really learn a lot about the products themselves.
Yeah. About partnerships, it can very well. It can be really difficult to get the partnerships done. One of the things that's been working on doing is helping companies develop kind of blueprints for evaluating who the right partners. Because it's difficult, because very often the brand that's sponsoring can't be short. was trying to add desirable attributes it doesn't possess to its brand, which obviously poses difficulties for the partner brand, who might be dragged down by the undesirable attributes of the partner. So getting it right goes painful, really, really difficult. I mean, you know, Jaguar and formerly e-racing, I see that. Art Basel,
Yes.
what did Denmark, but how did Art Basel benefit in market?
That was for our new set of vehicles, specifically our SUV. So each vehicle really appeals to a certain customer. Say for the I-Pace, the South by Southwest, that electric vehicle really resonated with that segment. Again, we partnered with Wired Magazine. We had that alignment and overlap between our audiences. Whereas Art Basel, say the SUV, you may have seen commercials where there were unique artists, like someone was an artisan that created custom furniture and they drove the F-Pace, the SUV, those type of things. So really aligning with one, say, is the performance, like even Formula E was for our I-Pace, because that is essentially Formula One, but for electric vehicles. So that was new and different, whereas some of our other vehicles were more for the aesthetics, because for Jaguar, there's on top of performance, a key value is the aesthetics and the luxury and the premium value.
But that's the benefit to Jaguar. I think the question, correct me if I'm wrong, is really what did Art Basel get out of it?
Well, you know what? Because Art Basel, yeah, I mean, Art Basel, it's a unique experience. I mean, it attracts those that are interested in the modern art scene. All that being said, it also expands their audience because it attracted new type of leads or visitors that they normally wouldn't have to have an automotive type of exhibit there. I mean, that's new and different. I mean, they really encourage for Art Basel new and different type of experiences. They have a lot of celebrities there, so it's even beyond the art in the art scene. They're really trying to make it a whole, like, I would say, luxury focused event that really, again, focuses on the aesthetic. So I would say expanding both audiences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Luxury lifestyle.
Exactly. I call it just the lifestyle partnerships. The lifestyle.
Pushing it a bit, but that's a good answer.
And then for BioWox is a really unique company because it was founded by a very innovative scientist who worked in Nobel Prize winning lab, and it's based on the science of oxygen. These are very new and innovative type of products. One was, it's not exactly the sexiest, but it's an air scrubber, which you see here, and it's essentially, it cleans the air. It captures and destroys air contaminants. So it's used in a lot of industrial type of settings, say even like chemical companies, those type of things. But we also, on top of B2B, expanded to B2C, and a lot of very high-end clients, even for their own personal homes, would use them. A lot of different types of Olympians. 2 Olympic gold medalists use these BioWox air scrubbers, some for their own personal home, some for their even their horse farms. It was also used within agriculture, especially during the height of the avian flu. And then we expanded into more consumer type products, and one was a water supplement. So it was water with these bullets of oxygen and nitric oxide. And we actually had some giants drinking the water. So it was a high-end wellness segment, athletic segment, and what we had to do, this is new and different. So similar to Jaguar, they had to experience the brand. So we would have these clean air pop-up lounges where we would have the air scrubber, we'd have samples of the water, and especially for serious athletes, even some amateur athletes that are marathon runners, they would sample the water supplement and experience it even firsthand. You could experience it within even an hour of drinking the product. And then finally, we did have an agricultural supplement where it was not a fertilizer, but it was an enhancement where farmers could improve their crop and yield. And this is where we had different, again, ways to sample the product, where some of these major farmers, we had the second or third largest mushroom farmer in the country really do a side-by-side comparison. You saw it firsthand, the crop yield, and that's where you saw an increase, and we had various videos, and it was pretty fun. So this is conclusion and really synopsis of how to build brand experiences. And ultimately, again, going back to the beginning, aligning the multiple functions, strategy, marketing, and operations, and really delivering consistent value at each of those touch points in the customer journey, and really mapping out the customer journey. Ultimately, brand experience is a business strategy, and it differentiates organizations by creating these meaningful, memorable interactions. Ultimately, every interaction matters. So again, mapping out to that customer journey from sales to customer service, products, and employees. And then finally, measurement. So measurement, that could be sticky for some of these in-person type of events, but you really have to have the proper marketing aligned to the activations, especially before, during, and after the event. Say for Jaguar, we can measure pre-sales. For Verizon, we can measure new customer signups, those type of things. So really having a quantifiable measure against an in-person brand activation. And thank you.